Welcome to Prime 9, the countdown show that covers the very best in baseball. Guaranteed to start arguments, not end. In this episode, we bring you the best player at each position in the 1970s. 1 decade, 9 players, Prime 9. Just think about some of the legends who played ball in the 1970s.
Would you believe that? This guy's in another world.
Rod Carew hit .343 in the 70s. Pete Rose had 6 seasons of 200 or more hits. And Willie Stargell blasted 296 home runs, all decade highs.
Willie Stargell with a line drive home run.
Incredible, right? Well, guess what? None of them made our all-1970s team. They simply didn't have enough time at any one position to meet our standards. So if Carew, Charlie Hustle, and Pops didn't make it, who did? We've got the answer, starting in right field, number 9 in your scorebook on Prime 9.
Reggie Jackson.
There it goes. He really sat on it, and that's what he wanted to do, and he hasn't reached first base yet. It's going to take him 20 minutes to make a round trip.
What a fun player to watch. Loved his intensity, loved the way he played the game, loved his passion.
When I'm playing baseball, especially when it counts, the hell with Reggie Jackson that is gracious and sweet. Get it done now.
Holy cow, did he hit that?
I think what stands out in your mind is not what he hit, but when he hit them.
There's a long drive. That one is going way up. It is off the roof. That hit the transformer up there.
He had a bounce to his step, and some people might call it cockiness. I call it confidence. Reggie had that.
Confident enough to predict that they'd name a candy bar after him if he became a Yankee. And they did.
Reggie's flamboyance could not be overlooked by anybody.
The fact that people relate me or associate me with winning speaks for itself.
But he backed up his flamboyance with production.
Twice in the decade, Reggie led the league in home runs and slugging percentage. And in 1973, he won his only MVP award.
The kind of power that he has, he hits some of the longest shots in baseball.
But it's the number 5 that truly defined Reggie. For that's how many World Series rings he won in the 70s.
Reggie indeed rose to the occasion, and the bigger the stage, the better Reggie was.
A lot of guys will hit home runs in the World Series. Reggie Jackson hit 3. In 3 swings. That's just so remarkable.
Just a great clutch player. You know, they didn't call him Mr. October for nothing.
How this man has responded to pressure. Cesar Cedeno.
Every team needs a center fielder, and I don't think there was one better during the 70s than Cesar Cedeno.
Back deep goes Cedeno, back, grabs it on the run.
The first time I heard about Cesar,
He can do everything.
somebody said, this is going to be the next Willie Mays.
Cedeno has a chance to be as good a ball player as Willie Mays was.
He was a 5-tool player. Cedeno had all the tools.
And that's hit with power, run, field, and throw.
But it was his combination of power and speed that set him apart.
Here's a guy who hit with power, and here's a guy who could hit a triple. And when you see that package, you're looking at a very, very unusual kind of player.
To hit 20 home runs and steal 50 bases in a season is rare. Cesar did it 3 straight years in the 70s.
I had just set a record as being the first person to hit 20 home runs and steal 50 bases in a season. And then suddenly, he's in that role. And he used to tell me, amigo, I do the same thing.
Cesar's style of play was a perfect fit for those flashy Astros uniforms.
Showman, got people's attention.
If you stay around a little bit longer, I'll show you my power's back.
Good shot to left field. Back goes Yastrzemski, and that's out of here. Home run by Cesar Cedeno.
With 4 All-Star appearances and 5 Gold Gloves in the decade, Cedeno certainly stood out amongst his peers.
He really was a game changer. He had that ingredient you don't see very often.
And Cesar knew that many of those doubles he hit might have been home runs had he not played half his games in the cavernous Astrodome.
I think the main thing why the ball doesn't carry as well as in other places because it's on the ground.
No matter, the scintillating Cedeno wears the crown as the center fielder of the 70s.
He certainly, at that one period of time was one of the best players in baseball.
He got people's attention, and he kept people's attention, and a very, very talented player.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the all-1970s team. We've covered the outfield in right and center. Now it's on to left, number 7. Cincinnati traded for George Foster in 1971, and in his first 4 years with the Reds, he started in just 205 games. But in 1975, manager Sparky Anderson jump-started both Foster's career and the Reds' fortunes when he shook up the lineup.
The club was struggling. They needed to get another bat in the lineup. Foster's was the one that Sparky decided upon.
With Foster now in left, the Reds went on a blistering 41-9 stretch.
It turned out that maybe I was the missing piece. They say timing is everything, and it was the right time for me.
This ball hit well deep left field. This ball is out of here. Home run, Foster.
And once Foster was in the lineup on a daily basis, the rest is history.
This could be it. Left field. George Foster makes the catch. The Cincinnati Reds win the World Series.
Championship seasons in both 75 and 76 helped make Foster a key member of the Big Red Machine. George hit 300 or better in both of those years and had 121 RBIs in 76. But it was the next year, his MVP year, when George became the only player in the decade to hit 50 home runs. He also led the league in RBIs and finished with a league-high .631 slugging percentage.
And it all had come together to be able to compile the 52 home runs, 320 batting average, 149 RBIs.
He really got into that one.
Massive wrist that just absolutely flipped.
Inches over Carl Yastrzemski's head. Foster hits the ball harder than anybody in the National League.
And he could drive the ball out of any ballpark.
Even George's bat was intimidating.
First guy in baseball to use a black bat, he called it Black Beauty.
And he rode that horse to 2 home run titles and 3 RBI crowns in the decade, making him one of the 70s most feared sluggers.
When you have that kind of power and the type of offensive lineup we had, it was perfect.
Hi, I'm Toby Hara, hometown Bedford, Texas, shortstop.
Toby Hara's first full season was in 1971 as the 22-year-old starting shortstop for the Washington Senators.
Line drive right to the shortstop, and Hara makes the catch.
Toby hit just 3 home runs his first 3 years, but shortly after the team moved to Texas, he began a string of 8 double-digit home run seasons and was the only shortstop in the decade to hit 20 more than once.
In the 70s, you still saw a lot of no-hit, good glove shortstops, guys who may have 5, 6, 7 home runs on the season, maybe drive in 40, 50, 60 runs.
Toby Hara in the cleanup spot at shortstop.
Toby had a lot to do with changing that part of the game.
Only the second major league shortstop in history to hit 20 home runs and steal 20 bases in the same year, Toby Hara.
He said that baseball, there's more to playing shortstop than just fielding the ball and throwing to first base or completing a double play.
One of the bigger shortstops. He's got power, he can hit the home run.
He said that you also have to use the bat, and he did that.
And Lucchesi exhorting Hara as he comes up to the plate.
Keep it going.
Toby Hara led the league among shortstops in home runs for the decade and drove in a lot more runs than the typical shortstop of that era.
If you didn't expect Hara to be our shortstop of the 70s, you're not alone.
I think he's very underpublicized. Toby Hara, the Texas Rangers.
But his play did not go unnoticed by his peers.
Well, he got my attention. He got my attention a lot. He was probably one of my tougher outs.
Oh, I think everybody looked towards Toby as one of the best players in the American League at that time.
Here's the pitch. Swung on, a high fly ball left field. That ball is out of here and a home run.
I think he should make that all-70 team.
And it's Hara with a great catch.
Because you ain't gonna find no guy that come out there and leave it on the field no more than Toby doing that era.
Welcome back to Prime 9, featuring the all-1970s team. Reggie Jackson is our right fielder. Cesar Cedeno is in center. Next came George Foster in left. And Colbert Dale Toby Harrah is our shortstop, which means it's time for number 5 in your scorebook. Third base.
I'm sure that Mike Schmidt's the best third baseman of the 70s, without a doubt.
That's easy to say today. Not so when Mike first broke into the league.
My first year, in 1973, I only hit 18 home runs and I hit under 200. So the adjustment process for me in the early years of my career was quite difficult.
Spring training is a time of new beginnings, and that's just what Mike Schmidt needed after spending much of '73 in Danny Ozark's doghouse.
I says, you're damn 198 average, didn't impress me or anybody else. You're going to hit the way I want you to hit, or you can take off.
And so, he took off. Mike became the first NL third baseman to lead the league in homers 3 straight seasons. But it still wasn't enough for this perfectionist.
Schmidt was such a tremendous talent. Enjoyed playing the game. Frustration because he didn't play it better. I guess that's what probably drove him to some of the numbers that he had.
It is out of here, Michael Jack Schmidt.
From 74 through 79, Mike hit at least 35 home runs 5 times, leaving pitchers who'd been punched looking for a punchline.
My thoughts about the way he hit me.
Get out of here. Hit the deep left center. Get up, get up.
Just 2 words to say. Schmidt happens.
Out of here, home run.
He was tough.
And he was special, winning 4 of his 10 gold gloves in the 70s, with a fielding prowess that amazed even his teammates.
Mike Schmidt was as good a third baseman as I've ever seen defensively.
What a play Mike Schmidt made.
But I don't know of anybody that could field the ball with his bare hand and throw to first base as well as he did.
All around third baseman as good as anybody I've ever seen. Mike Schmidt could do it all.
Second base, and you got little Joe Morgan, who used a glove about the size of an oven mitten.
Well, his glove may have been tiny, and Joe wasn't all that tall either. But everything about his game was big.
Morgan has his second hit, and you can look for him to go for a pair, maybe 3. He'll try to get 3 out of it, and will do it with ease as he goes in standing up.
He was one of those players, to me, that could beat you so many different directions you didn't know where you were coming.
Joe could take the walk, get the base hit, steal the base, hit the ball out of the ballpark.
Uh-oh, that's deep.
And if you needed to win a ball game, Joe would do it.
Joe was an Astro when the 70s began. But after the 71 season, he became a vital cog in a machine.
When you're on a team with Johnny Bench, Tony Perez, Pete Rose, George Foster, Concepcion, all those guys, I was a little lucky that all the things that I did well fit in so well with that ball club.
He posted a .404 on-base percentage, scored just over 1,000 runs, and selectively stole nearly 500 bases in the decade.
Joe was the kind of guy that could have stolen as many bases as Ricky Henderson or Lou Brock, but Joe only stole when we needed to have a run.
There he goes, first pitch. Not in time.
I told him, you have no signs until you show me that you need them. He came back, he said, I want to tell you, I'll never need them.
In 1975 and 76, Joe was on top of the baseball world. For not only was he a back-to-back champion,
Congratulations, second consecutive World Championship.
he was also the back-to-back NL MVP.
That 2 years, 75, 76, he can do it all.
In the top 5 in the National League in 10 offensive departments, the National League most valuable player in 1975, number 8, Joe Morgan.
My proudest accomplishment, because for me to win the MVP award for producing numbers that the big guys produce.
There she goes, deep to right field, 1-0 Cincinnati.
I think it helped put second baseman on the map.
Come on, Steve A, keep us going now. Hey, come on, let's go.
Steve Garvey could hit. I mean, he's getting 200 hits with power.
In fact, he had 5 200-hit seasons in the 70s, the second most in the majors.
Consistency is the best term to describe Garvey. And he has a base hit up the middle.
My goals would be 300, 200, 100, 300 average, 200 hits, 100 RBIs, and to have a quality at bat every time up.
You're looking at one of the toughest outs in the National League, a man who consistently rises to the occasion.
Like when he made the '74 All-Star Game as a write-in candidate and was named the MVP.
I just can't express in words itself the thanks to all the people across the country that got me here.
He was the National League MVP that year, too, and helped lead the Dodgers to the World Series.
This was a special guy. He had that real good arm and hand strength.
Look at those arms.
Yes, sir.
Blacksmith.
Very patient at the plate, used a whole field, and then as he developed, he became a 30 home run guy.
Steve Garvey has given the Dodgers a 3-1 lead.
In the 1970s, Garvey had 4 seasons with more than 100 RBIs. He played in 3 World Series, appeared in 6 All-Star games, and captured 4 Gold Gloves at first.
My virtues were I was a defensive back in Michigan State, so I had good footwork, good quickness. Being less than 6 foot, I used to tell my infield, throw it high, wave goodbye, throw it low, we're good to go, because I had this innate ability to dig the ball out of the dirt.
And we haven't even touched on his durability, for starting in '75, Steve would play in 1,207 consecutive games. That is still the National League record.
Consistency is founded on a real passion for what you're doing, and I just love the game of baseball. I had a passion to play every inning of every game, so you learn how to play through pain and still be able to make a contribution to your team.
Iron Man, strong man, take your pick. We'll call him the Prime 9 first baseman of the '70s. We now return to Prime 9, where in this episode, we're featuring the 9 greatest players in the 1970s, one at each position. Most of these stars of the '70s were fairly easy to select, though some gave us reason to pause. So now it's time for numbers 1 and 2, the greatest battery of the disco decade. We begin behind the plate with number 2.
It's the nearest thing to suicide to run on the kid from Oklahoma.
I just happened to be the kid from Binger, Oklahoma that walked into a life that he was meant to fit in. I had the great arm, loved to throw.
He would throw you out in the bat of an eye.
Here we go. Texas throw right on the money. Look at that kid throw.
Johnny was a great receiver. He managed his pitches extremely well.
You're getting tired. You're rushing yourself trying to compensate. Take your time. You stay on top. That's all.
Johnny Bench had an imposing mix of smarts and swagger.
Hey, come at me now.
And opponents couldn't help but notice.
I was hitting and I kind of peeked back to see what Johnny was setting up. Johnny was looking me straight in the eye. And he says, "What are you looking at, kid?"
It was enough as a defensive catcher what he did for the team, but it was like an added bonus to have a guy like Johnny Bench in the middle of your lineup driving in runs and hitting home runs.
Bench was the Rookie of the Year in '68, the year he began a streak of 13 consecutive All-Star selections, including every year in the '70s.
In '70, he wins an MVP, and in '72, he comes along with another 40 home run season, 125 RBIs. He wins the MVP again.
Bench hit 290 home runs in the decade, 119 more than the next catcher. And his 1,013 RBIs were the most in the '70s by any player in the majors.
Johnny Bench, his 16th home run of the year, and the Reds win it 9-6.
He led the NL in home runs twice and RBIs 3 times. Bench was the catcher of the '70s and would have been in every other decade, too.
He could do anything he wanted to do as a player. He had that type of talent, and he had that type of ability. He could virtually play at a different league. There was another league past the major leagues. He could qualify for that. That's how good Johnny Bench was.
Jim Palmer was absolutely fantastic.
Right-hander Jim Palmer, starting pitcher for Baltimore.
When you watched him warm up, I honestly felt like every start was going to be a no-hitter.
Without question, one of the great pitches of our time.
You just hoped you could maybe go 0 for 3 with a walk. That would be a good day.
Palmer with strikeout number 5 on that whistling fastball.
If you were the opposition, you knew what I was going to do. I was going to throw a lot of fastballs.
Another Palmer fastball.
Just a high, hard one. He'd throw the ball up around your waistline, and it seemed like it would just jump.
And Palmer has done it again.
He pitched the high fastball, and the curveball came off it.
You think he doesn't know how to pitch?
He's a cagey bird, isn't he?
Master surgeon out there.
He could always keep the batters, off balance, and I believe that's why he won 20 games so many times.
Palmer's won 11 games, appears to be headed for another 20-game season.
In fact, Jim won 20 or more games an amazing 8 times in the 70s, and his 186 wins in that decade were the most in baseball.
He was durable. He would go out there and he would go 9 innings.
Jim just gets stronger and stronger, and I'll tell you, if you don't get him through about the first 4 or 5, you might not get him at all.
Only 2 pitchers in the 70s had more than his 175 complete games, and 4 times he led the league in innings pitched.
It just seemed like I could pitch as well in the 9th inning as I did in the 1st inning. Maybe even a little bit better because I was in a rhythm.
No starting pitcher in the 70s had a better ERA than Palmer's 2.58.
Jimmy pitched through a lot of pain.
Pain due in great part to the fact that Palmer averaged close to 275 innings a year.
He was always complaining about something, but when it came to that 4th day and Jimmy going out there and pitching, Jimmy went out there and pitched.
Got him on the inside corner.
People that are into biomechanics say it's impossible to pitch every 4th day and have your body recover. I never really thought about those things because that's what they paid you for, and if you didn't have complete games and you couldn't do that, they'd find somebody else.
You don't find those kind of guys. They're 1 in 500 in the big leagues. He was that kind of guy. Very clutch pitcher. If you needed a win, he's the guy you want on the mound.
So now that we've established our all-70s team, let's play manager and make out our prime 9 lineup. Batting leadoff, center field, Cesar Cedeno. Batting and playing second, Joe Morgan.
Morgan has at least 2, and he'll stop at second, a double.
In the 3-hole, catcher Johnny Bench.
Texas throw right on the money. Look at that gift throw.
Batting cleanup today, Reggie Jackson.
Jackson is unbelievable.
At number 5, third baseman Mike Schmidt.
It is out of here, Michael Jack Schmidt.
In the 6th position, left fielder George Foster. Hitting 7th and playing first base, Steve Garvey. Our 8th place hitter is right-hander Toby Harrah. And warming up on the mound and batting 9th, Jim Palmer. That's our all-1970s starting lineup and our prime 9. What's yours?